What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Hobby Hotline. Today's episode is 238 here on Saturday, April 8th. We have a great group of co-hosts here. We'll start with Dr. Beckett. How are we doing today?
Doing great, Adam. Thanks.
Always great to hear from you. Victor from RCS. How are we doing?
Good morning, gentlemen.
And last but certainly not least, we have Mike from Junk Wax Hero. How are we doing on Saturday?
Great, thanks. Really excited to be here for my first show.
Absolutely. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Hopefully in the comments can jump in and welcome Mike. This, like you said, this is his first show. One of the first times, we've met. So it was, it's always good to catch up with some of the co-hosts before the show. We are going to start, obviously last week we touched on the Beckett grading scale, and then they sort of reverted back a little bit of the grading scale. And then they came out with, they're trying to do more of a customer survey. So, we'll start out with you, Dr. Beckett. Obviously, this is a little bit of a touchy subject. So, don't expose anybody. Just kind of give your thoughts on sort of what happened here. And from your perspective, if there's, what exactly you think of it.
Well, I mean, the perceptions change over the years. And I think that's a good thing for all of us to keep in mind. When I sold a company, which has now been 18 years, we were not in first place in volume, I don't think, because PSA was I think always was grading the most cards, but we were a very legitimate second and probably first in terms of many of the submitters. We were winning awards for the best grading service, not the one that graded the most, because PSA had a good head start on us, but over the years, the perception of the company, perhaps, but and of BGS and of 9.5s in particular has evolved, and that perception has probably not been to the benefit of the company and the brand. And so I think they were attempting to do some kind of a refresh. I ironically had done a podcast a few weeks before on some of my thoughts about kind of the different ways people have and do think about 9.5s. And they did not consult me. So I was not part of the decision. I was not in the group that was asked. And I would not have done that. What I would have done, I will save to tell them if they want to know my opinion. I've told some of them, but we'll see. I mean, it's a PR problem at this point, and I hope it can be, I really believe it can be positively resolved, and I'm hoping for that.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I'll kick it over to you, Mike, in a second. I think unfortunately, this is like the second time we've really seen sort of I don't want to call it a pitfall, but like something with like a signage. Like I think it was either at the National or some show where they came out with like the new label with a new logo. And then this time they came out with the new sign that had the 395s, and they sort of reverted back. So I'll kick it over to you, Mike. Like, a lot of stuff has sort of even changed, honestly, because we talked about this on the last show on last Saturday. But since then, a lot has changed. So Mike, from your perspective, like what do you think of sort of everything that's happened so far?
Yeah, every company makes a lot of mistakes, and Beckett's have been very, very public in view. I'm really interested in how they make such big decisions. Dr. Beckett, I know you've been gone for 18 years, but do you have any perspective into how a decision like that, originally 4 9.5s equals a 10, and then the next day they changed it so that there were a series of 9.5s that would equal a 10? Who is involved in a decision like that? Is it just the marketing team? Is it? Go ahead.
Not me. So, if I would have been involved, I'm listed as an advisor, and I'm happy to advise, and I have strong opinions, and my opinions, at least like all of us, I think my opinions are right. They're certainly my opinions, and I'd love for them to listen to my opinions. And if they want to go a different direction, they've earned the right. I sold the company. I'm not the decision maker anymore. How they make decisions, sometimes, guys, there's a desire to bring in fresh blood and to make some changes. And you don't always want to talk to the old regime when you're going to want to make some changes. And I think some changes could have been made, but not those changes. So That's the problem, Mike. I don't really know. And I think that's the good thing, hopefully, about this. This is called into question how those decisions are made. And so hopefully the company and the brand will endure and be better off for some of these things being called into question. That's my hope.
So, like I said, grading is always a topic that sort of is up for debate, up for discussion. Victor, from your perspective, like, I don't know, maybe how would you have gone about this differently? Like, what are your kind of thoughts on this overall as well?
Yeah, for me, the initial reaction, I was taken back by it only because I felt like, we're reacting to the opinions of a few instead of responding in a position of leadership. And so to me, that's the part that really looked ugly. And then they retracted and it was like, oh my goodness, are you kidding me? But since then, they've gone the survey route. I know I got an email here recently in the last couple of days that they're taking a survey on the topic. And I think that's a good idea. And I've watched a couple of videos, I think from Sports Collector or Jeff Wilson, who did I believe he was there when all of this went down. And I think he's been a good voice of reason. Also, Neil from Neil Cards and Comics, he's been a voice of reason, really spearheading the conversation on YouTube, anyways. And they've come up with some really good concepts. I think my opinion of it all, as I'm thinking about it, I've never been a fan of the 9.5. Now, I'm not a Beckett grading. Everything that I have is in PSA, so I really don't have an opinion on that. My only thing is the concept of having 3 different types of 10s, I think is outrageous. So they need to figure that out, in my opinion.
Right. I agree. And I think too, also just one kind of point that I have, it's maybe just like a general point is like, I think unfortunately it was maybe a mistake the way everything was rolled out, and the social media people too, I think like they aren't the ones involved in these types of scenarios. So like, this is just my tip for anybody. If you're going to go leave a comment on Beckett's social media or tweet them or do something along those lines, just like, don't do it. I mean, I understand that, or if it's constructive, I think that's worth your time. But like, if you're just going to go leave some sort of nasty comment, just like avoid it. Cause like the people who made the decision aren't the ones looking at that social media. Like the social media people, the marketing people, the ones viewing it. And, obviously there's going to be maybe negative feedback in this scenario, but overall, like, I don't know, just in general, I think sometimes we forget in the hobby that there's people behind the social media accounts that are people running them.
Sure.
So like, those are just, that's kind of a general tip for me. Like, and, even I think if from a social media perspective, like here's what I would suggest doing, write the tweet out and then just delete it. Cause trust me, like writing it out, you'll get out what you're trying to say, but you don't have to put the negative energy into the world by actually pressing the button to tweet. So yeah, I mean, I'll kick it to anybody else has any like last minute thoughts, Dr. Beckett, of course.
Adam, just the other side of that coin is that the right decision that the powers that be at Beckett made was to pull back.
Right.
They would not have pulled back if the reception and the feedback had not been so negative. So as a leader, I don't want people to suppress their criticism if it's specific. If it's just, disparaging, you're an idiot or something, tell me how I'm an idiot. And so when they got specific criticism from people that I think they listened to, they made a good decision to pull back. So I'm pleased about that, to regroup and figure out, okay, we didn't realize the impact of some of these things. And they might not have had that, Adam, if they hadn't had such a vociferous pushback.
Right. So yeah, Victor, I'll leave it to you. Do you have any kind of last thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I think they have an opportunity here to really turn things around. I think they've got the attention of the hobby, and I think this survey and their next move is going to be a beneficial one. But I like the way they're going about it now. I didn't, the start of it was not the greatest, but they're on track, I think.
Right. And, Mike, before we move on, do you have any last thoughts on the Beckett grading topic?
Yeah, Victor mentioned outrageous, the 10s. I would say that it's also very confusing for anybody if you need to have a decoder for what your rating might be. That's very confusing for people. And to Dr. Beckett's point, it would be arrogant of them to say, no, this is what we're going with, but they did the right thing and they pulled back. So that was the good move by them.
Right. And then, Dr. Beckett, any last thoughts here?
I wish it would be the last thought, but I don't think there'll be any last thoughts until we see what they decide. And again, a survey is a good thing, but again, surveys depends on who you survey. When I was the boss, I tried to make sure I wasn't looking for quantity. I was looking to talk to the right people, all the different segments of the industry. But then when I was the boss, I had to make the call. And so sometimes I didn't agree with the survey results, and I'd have to take the heat. And so I hope, even if the survey says something, that they'll look at all the segments of the hobby and not just the loudest ones, and make a good decision. And I hope I'm included in that input. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think things are still developing. We can see how quickly things are changing sort of in the hobby. Like even just within a day, things went completely flipped upside down there. I want to give a shout out to, sorry, go ahead, Victor.
I do want to and here's my thing, because a lot of the talk on it was that they are going to mimic what the grading scale of SGC and CSG, and everybody felt, or not everybody, but some people felt that was a good idea. I didn't. I think if I'm going to imitate anybody's grading scale, I'm going to imitate PSAs, if that's the case, because that's the 100-pound, the 100,000-ton elephant, right? It's the big boy. So, right. And I think that's part of PSA's appeal is, I think the majority of collectors like the grading scale of PSA over any other.
Right.
That's all. I'm done.
So I want to give a shout out to everybody in the comments. As many of you know, Hobby Hotline is a global. I think last week we had some people from Mexico watching. So if you are watching, leave a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. If you're new to the stream, make sure you hit subscribe. Come back to Bench Clear Media here on Saturdays, and then Hobby Hotline on Tuesdays for our Tuesday night show. The next topic we have that some people on this panel, some people kind of within the Hobby Hotline community, they were sort of breaking some of the news that some of the top Panini employees were potentially moving over to Fanatics. I think Rich Klein, I believe, was saying in one of the group chats we have with Hobby Hotline that about 8 or 9 people have already been confirmed. So, we're seeing sort of a pretty decent sized shift in the industry. I'll start with you, Mike. So what do you think about, all of this, like people moving companies, like the shifting sort of in the atmosphere right now?
Yeah. And I think the news was broken by Hobby News Daily originally, that I don't know if you said that, but great stuff there. And I'm curious about if these people who were presumably executive or director level, did they have non-compete clauses with Panini? And if so, did Panini release them from them? Or did they just go thinking that there was nothing Panini would do? It's really interesting to see. And then next, is there a further announcement coming? A lot of people speculated all of last year that Fanatics would buy Panini. I really don't think that's going to happen, but it'll be interesting if something further does happen coming up in the near future.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too, like about the non-competes, because within our industry, I feel like there's the companies are kind of like they're direct competitors. So like the non-compete kind of question was always something that when I was seeing these news things come out, like that was kind of the one thing I was wondering. Victor, what do you think of this big shift that we're seeing right now going on with some of the employees of these companies?
I kind of expected it, to be honest with you, coming from a management background at the railroad where I work. You see kind of the same behaviorisms, right? You got a upper brass management takeover. You have a lot of moving pieces start happening in management, and they start releasing some people, bringing people over that they know or they want in place, and they start positioning people in certain teams, right? And they kind of get rid of the people they don't want, bring in the people that you want. And Michael Rubin going over to card shows. Those are all things that somebody at that level should be doing, right? Getting the vibe of what's going on. So all of these things are basic things that happen during this type of transition. And so I'm not surprised by it. I think it's, hey, if you got talent out there that wants to come on over, why not? It's a good move. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, obviously, because I mean, at least for the next 10, 15 years, Fanatics is really going to be the one sort of running the show here. I'm interested from your perspective, Dr. Beckett, have you seen anything like this over the, throughout the course of you being within sports cards, like large companies, I guess? Like, is this as monumental as we think it is, or is this something that has happened in the past?
Happened in the past. Some of these guys used to work for me. So you have to understand that, and these are really good guys, the ones I know that used to work for me and that I've had a fair amount of interaction with. They were very loyal to our company, but their first loyalty is to their family and probably to their career. And so at some point, several of those guys left our company and went to work for Panini. Actually, it was pre-Panini. It was more Playoff and the predecessor company. And they've been there. So they've been loyal. But most of the ones I know are they're versatile, but they've been doing basketball. And so when you hear the announcement that Topps is going to be jumping into basketball sooner and more aggressively than we thought, and they're hiring, then the basketball guys at Panini are thinking, again, I think non-competes in Texas are very hard to enforce, even if you're working for a similar thing. But if Panini doesn't do basketball anymore and these guys resign, and they go to work for Topps/Fanatics and do basketball, and Panini's not doing basketball, what's I mean, they're still going to retain some level of non-disclosure of trade secrets. That is enforceable, but the non-compete in the sense of not being able to get a job, perhaps on another part of the world, doing something similar, but maybe your old company is not doing it anymore. So I think it'd be really difficult to enforce. The fact that they resigned, perhaps there was some negotiation there. I don't know that they just cleaned out their locker and left. Right. They didn't do that with me. They were honorable in saying, this is an opportunity I have, I'm going to do this. And so we didn't get mad at guys that left our company. A couple times we try to talk them out of it, but it rarely is about the money. It's about them thinking they have a better opportunity in this new situation. So when you're the boss, guys, it's really hard to see people walk away. And when you're a teammate, there's, how about the people that are Panini that are still there? It's a very close-knit group.
Right. And I think too, it's kind of similar to the social media point that I was making. Like, I think sometimes we forget that, like, these are jobs. Like, I think, we within the hobby look at a lot of, like, people that maybe work at these card companies, and, maybe there's envy, maybe there's, maybe people could be jealous at times of some of the times they get to work at the company, but it's like, when there's mistakes made, when there's, changes made, it's just, it's a day job for someone. Like, for example, like the couple weeks ago, we ran into that issue with the George Brett Babe Ruth autograph that was just put in the wrong card. Like, that was a mistake made by somebody, at their job. Like, that's not necessary. It wasn't done maliciously. Like, all of these things are, I think, in a way, trying to make the hobby a better place. So I'll kick it back over to you, Mike. So, like, from your perspective, like, I guess the news this week, we probably covered it on the Tuesday show of Fanatics announcing they're going to be releasing those basketball products. Do you think that this was in anticipation, like these people moving over to the company? Like, do you think that was in anticipation for the basketball products being made by Fanatics, or do you think it was, some other reason?
Oh, I think that those basketball products Fanatics has known about those for a long time. They don't, and I also think that they've been working with the Panini employees for a while to negotiate and bring them over. I don't know if it was in anticipation of any specific product coming out or further basketball products. But also, I know if you go over to Fanatics website and look at their jobs, they have hundreds and hundreds of jobs that are open. So they're planning on growing a lot.
Right. And so, Victor, I'll kick it. Kind of the same question. Like, do you think this was in anticipation for the basketball products that they're potentially going to be coming out with? Or do you think it was just maybe, or do you think maybe that it was in anticipation that, Panini might just be buying, or Fanatics might be buying Panini potentially?
Kind of does get the speculation wheel churning, don't it?
Right.
Just a coincidence.
Yeah. I do. I think it's probably part of it. Part of the reason why this transition is happening. Well, I hope it does, but we'll see. We'll have to see. I just, having like a monopoly, one company owning everything is kind of concerning to me. So in that aspect, I don't know. Also, if they're going to do a basketball product with, that's not licensed and you have no, airbrushed everything, that's, to me, is for me, I don't like it. But as far as, I think it was Jeff Wilson, I think, who brought up the idea about, why can't we strike a deal and have both companies being licensed? I don't see nothing wrong with that, and have, Topps create a basketball product. I know they're probably wanting to take advantage of that hot rookie, Victor Wemby, I'm just going to call him. So I would hate to see those cards, without logos. It would be upsetting to me, and I don't think to have a prospect of that caliber, to have his first Topps basketball card in a non-logo type card is, I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they should do that anyways. How about that?
Right. And so I'll ask you, Dr. Beckett. It's kind of similar. Last year we did see Topps come out with their Bowman Chrome U football product that was unlicensed, and then this year they come out. The NIL kind of changed a lot of stuff, but I think it's clear that Topps/Panini, or Topps/Fanatics, really, they're not scared to come out if they know that in the next year or so they're going to have those licenses, that they're not scared to come out with an unlicensed product. Do you think it's worth the time and effort to put in for an unlicensed product for this upcoming basketball season for Fanatics? Or do you think in the long run it would just be better if they waited?
Well, one of the comments was about collectors/executives, that you can be an executive and not a collector, or you can be an executive and still have a collecting insight. So Jeff Wilson, he gets that. So if he'd think of it like a business, but he'd think of it like understanding collecting mentality. Same with me, but not everybody's like that. However, when you get to Fanatics, where they're thinking really big. One of their partners is the Players Association. So if the Players Association, I thought that the Panini basketball license was an exclusive license with the leagues and the players up through 2025 or 2026. Okay. If it's not exclusive, then they can make a deal, or the Players Association can somehow, that's a scary thought. And that would allow for both companies to do at least player licensed cards. The leagues usually have a different decision structure. So I'm frustrated because I don't see it being good for the hobby, having a bunch of other sets that are basketball, but not of the players people want in the uniforms they want. If that's just, and somebody like Fanatics doing it, they're so big, they're not thinking like a boutique product. They're thinking about making a splash, I think, moving the needle. And so I hope there's more going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. That's not so much of a power play, but something that would be, a cooperative way to build the industry. I don't want Fanatics gain to be at Panini's expense. I think having Panini being strong is good for the hobby. Fanatics, they can be stronger, but I don't think it has to be a one horse race.
And actually, so I sort of have a little bit of a follow up there. Do you think that they're like, why do you think that Fanatics is trying to rush into maybe creating a product before they have the license? Like, do you think that they're making a mistake by trying to rush into it? Or like, do you think that they're trying to maybe capitalize off of the new rookie, but like without the license, like it doesn't seem like it makes much sense, I guess.
They could potentially lock in Victor Wembanyama for an exclusive that would somehow preclude him being part of the Players Association for, let's say, a year. And maybe same thing with Scoot Henderson and these other guys. I mean, again, it's the Players Association. You wouldn't do that if you were a company that didn't have them on board. They're not going to do things to make them mad. So I think there's a lot more to the story, Adam, that we don't know. But Fanatics is not run by stupid people. They're smart, right? And they think big. And but same thing with Panini. They've got really sharp people that are going to respond to this. And but again, it was mainly a kind of, I guess, an invitation that we're filling a lot of basketball positions. And these really strong basketball guys that I've had on my show, and I've known them for 20 plus years, 25 years, you know, they're really sharp, and they're probably, what's best for them is to go where the action is. And the future action, you know, from the headlines from a year and a half ago are going to be going through Fanatics.
Right. And I think, Mike, I'll kick it over to you. Did you have any kind of follow-up thoughts on sort of this discussion that we've been having?
Yeah, so I watched a video by Neo Cards and Comics this week where he talked about the possibility of Fanatics buying the license to produce cards from Panini, which would give some liquidity to Panini to do whatever they wanted to do next, which I thought was an interesting thought. I don't know if that's in the works, obviously, but certainly something to consider.
But whatever it was, the price just went down.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, and I think we have seen, I mean, so far, I think Fanatics has made good business moves when it comes to, like, you know, Topps was going to go public, and then, you know, they bought the baseball and basketball and football licenses, and the next thing you know, Topps can't go public anymore because their top asset isn't there, and then they come in and then they buy Topps after the fact. So, you know, and it may be something similar, to be completely honest, with like Fanatics. They're going to be making the jerseys for the NHL, I think, in the next upcoming years. So I don't know, maybe it's something similar with maybe that's something similar with hockey cards potentially. Like Fanatics, you know, they're such a successful business because they're good at doing business, whether that is good for the hobby or whether that's good for Fanatics. I guess we're still kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern, I think, because, you know, Topps obviously has sort of shifted, but I don't think necessarily Fanatics is like, I think the Fanatics people are working with Topps, but I think the fact that they bought Topps means that they still have kind of a combined team, and it's not like all the Fanatics team are now working on Topps. So Victor, from your perspective, like, do you think that if they were to come out with this basketball product and it were to be unlicensed, do you think that would be a mistake, like, for Fanatics, or like, what do you think overall there from that perspective?
I do, but that's subjective, right? Some people would love it, some people would hate it. I do think the ball is in Fanatics' court, I guess, pun intended. And the reason why I say that is because, you know, they've written such a big check to the Players Association that the Players Association is going to be very compliant to whatever recommendations Fanatics wants to make. They're going to be okay with it. Now, the league, to Dr. Beckett's point, getting the league's permission might be a totally different ball game, but you know, they have all the chips, man. They have all the cards, and so they're going to be able to play it however they want.
Newsflash: next year's Upper Deck product, shirtless. They won't be entitled to the wear the jerseys, the sweaters, because Fanatics controls them. They won't give permission for Upper Deck hockey cards to be in the jerseys.
Wow.
Well, something happened with Upper Deck recently, actually, and maybe it's a little bit off topic here, but they switched actually the configuration of the like flagship product. Like they came out with the configuration for Series 1 of next year, and there's 50 less cards per box. And Connor Bedard is considered, he's supposed to be like the next guy, like he's supposed to be the next, not, I don't think Gretzky, but people are saying like McDavid, like Austin Matthews, Sidney Crosby. He's supposed to be that next guy. So, why do you think, Dr. Beckett, actually, I'll ask you this question, like decisions like that, are they made on a year-to-year basis, or are they made like, was this decision made 5 years ago when they didn't even know that there was going to be a Connor Bedard? Because, I mean, in my opinion, if they did it knowing, like if they made the decision over the past year with the Connor Bedard potential, like, is that, I don't know. I don't like that move, but I don't know from your perspective or from your background, is this a decision that was made 5 years ago versus, a year ago, I guess?
I don't think it was made 5 years ago, but in the last year, we've had a lot of inflation. And so the old candy bar thing is that you're going to increase the price or you're going to shrink the size. Well, the Upper Deck's done both, and they've increased the quantity. They're going to produce more. It's going to be a smaller box. So you're paying more per card. They're printing more cards to take advantage of the Connor Bedard. So I think they believe he's a generational talent. And so as long as the hobby believes that, they're going to sell through a bunch of that. And, but the pack configuration is different. What I said on the show last time was, the pack, you have box odds, which seem like the same, but you have pack odds, which are not the same because you got half as many packs or not as many packs in the box. And so you got to buy twice as many boxes. The boxes are not cheaper. They're more expensive. So I think it was time for Upper Deck to jump out there, and I won't say exploit or take advantage, because again, if they print too many, it'll be bad. But I think they're going to print a lot more, and it's going to sell a lot more.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, from my perspective, I think it's a combination of all those things. Like they reduce the amount of cards in the box, but they're also going to increase the print run, and they're either going to keep the boxes the same price or increase the price. So I don't know that like I said, like I just mentioned, I'm not a huge fan of the move, to be completely honest, because like I get from a business perspective, but it's like sometimes you have to look at the business perspective and the long-term effects of what it could do.
But your point from before is when that came out, if they'd had a firestorm of criticism like BGS had, they might have retrenched or rehuddled and figured, hey, wait a minute, we got to, this is not going to work. But they didn't. People said, hey, how am I going to get those Connor Bedard cards? I'm going to pay a little bit more, but they're going to be more available. And, like I say, the pack odds, this was the time to make that change. And all companies are making smaller boxes for more money with less cards.
Right.
I mean, that's how they make more money.
I think Logan has an interesting question here, and I'll kick it to Victor for this answer. Do you think Fanatics has bullied their way into the card market? I'm interested, Victor, from your perspective. Like, what do you think of that?
I think they bought their way into the card market, but they are operating. I like the way they're operating. They're operating as the authority. They're making good decisions. At least so far, from what I can tell, there is this element of we're going to do it this way type of leadership, and I can respect it to a certain extent.
I did also want to, highlight one of the comments Ziggy had here. Actually, let me make sure it shows up. Just about sorry, I'm trying to click here. It's not showing. Oh my God. Here we go. Okay. So I think the interesting point here is that they talked about Bronny being in those Topps Chrome boxes, and then it doesn't end up being in the Topps Chrome box. So I guess, Mike, from your perspective, like, would you have made the announcement differently? Like, I hadn't thought of it that way, to be completely honest. Like, why would Topps announce that they've got Bronny James and then have him not be in the box? I get maybe it's for next year, but like, even so, it's like the announcement sounded like with kind of the announcement with the timing of this year's release seemed like it was going to be this year. So like, Mike, from your perspective, how would you have gone about that differently? Like, would you have come out and say he's not what product, or do you think it was maybe a mistake that sort of the announcement wasn't necessarily made? It kind of came out because I think people were talking about it at the Topps Industry Conference, and it wasn't exactly like a press release type of announcement. Like, so from your perspective, would you have done something different there?
Well, I'm not familiar with the exact controversy here, but it sounds to me like, and I don't know if Fanatics caused the confusion or if the press releases did that people were interpreting, but there's a reason I don't work for Fanatics as a senior executive, because I would not cause that confusion. I would be very honest and upfront, and that doesn't get you a lot of packs of cards sold.
Oh, you're hired. You're hired, Mike.
yeah, thanks. But Mike makes a good comment up there. I don't know if you want to highlight, ultimately the market will speak.
Yeah, that was going to be the next one.
This is a great point. And I'm seeing this in my local Walmarts and Targets, where they are fully stocked every time I go in, because the prices have shot up. The pack odds have gone way worse, and people just aren't buying them as much. And that's the market.
But they're going to change that, I believe, with chase cards like MLB debut patches, and that stuff. If they put it in that retail product,
exactly,
that's what'll get the stuff off the shelves.
One point, maybe it's a quibble, but I don't think it really is, because I really have a lot of respect for Mike Summer. But that's not necessarily how these card companies respond. They don't lower the price. They lower the quantity. If it's too available, they don't lower the price. They rarely lower the price. They lower the quantity so that it's tougher to get the next year or the next time they have an opportunity to set quantities. If they're printing to demand is less. They don't lower the price to increase the demand, because then they've lowered their margins and they're working twice as hard to make half as much money. So they don't lower the price, they lower the quantity, I think, in many cases.
I got you. That makes sense.
I'll highlight another comment here. So it's not about the collector; it's all about the money. I sit somewhere on the fence here, I think, with this one, because I want the companies to succeed and make money, because then that brings more product and maybe potentially more eyeballs in. But I also understand where a collector would come in and say, well, 2016, you could have been buying your PC guys for $10-15, and now it's like you got to spend a couple hundred to get the same cards. So, I mean, I'll start with you, Mike, here. Do you think that, like, Fanatics coming in, like, where, like, I guess the question I'm trying to think of is, like, what would have to happen as a collector for you to view what Fanatics is doing as a success?
Oh, if they increase the market, if more people come into the market, if more people are going to shows, if dealers are successful, and I don't mean just people who are selling on eBay, but actual hobby shops. And I know, was it last week that you guys did the hobby shop episode, and our hobby shop's good? I thought that was a really good episode. But I think that if everybody can be successful who's in the hobby and not just Fanatics, then Fanatics has been successful.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think that kind of gets back to, like, if the companies can make money, but also if, collectors can come in and maybe buy and sell and then sort of fund the hobby. Because I think we're one of kind of the only industries where you can sort of do that. I mean, I guess sneakers, maybe in a way, clothing in a way, you can maybe do that. So Victor, I'll ask you the same question. What do you think would have to happen from your perspective for this to be viewed as a success when it comes to Fanatics coming in?
What? I'm sorry, say that again. What?
Sorry. Yeah. What would have to happen? How would you view Fanatics coming in? What would have to happen for you to view it as a successful kind of approach, or like coming in here?
Stop putting rookie card logos on inserts and stuff. I'm kidding. I think, I don't know, man. That's a tough question for me to answer. Be honest with you. I think I think they have so much power within the hobby now. They're just making all the calls from top to bottom, and the success is going to be, man. It's a new hobby. I think the novice collectors coming in is what's going to make them successful. I think the marketing that they're doing is going to be something that we have never seen before. It's going to be top-notch quality. They're going to become mainstream, and they're going to make this thing really broad in making it attractive. And I think that's where their success is going to lie, in how attractive they're going to make sports cards.
Yeah, I think that Fanatics making a lot of money is a capitalism success, but it's not a hobby success, and that's, I think, what I'm concerned about.
Well, if they're sucking all the money out of the hobby, I mean, this is an ecosystem. It's kind of like the predators, and they're the T-Rex, and if they eat up all the, if you get an imbalance out there, it's not good. Whatever that was millions of years ago, didn't end well for the dinosaurs either. So, but they're like global warming or something. I mean, they are so big, they're impacting so many things with unintended consequences, and they just need to be careful, because the hobby shops, the LCSs, they're an important part of the ecosystem. They need to be healthy, and breakers even, they need to be healthy. And so if Fanatics is too controlling, then that's not good. But if they allow these others to make fair profits and encourage them to really be ambassadors for the hobby, then that's good for them as well.
Right. And I think we went off the rails a little bit here, to be completely honest, with sort of the topics from this sort of conversation. So, I mean, I think we kind of got a lot of our thoughts and opinions out on a couple different things here. So I'm actually just going to sort of move on to what we got in the next topic, and it's the start of the baseball season. So I'm going to pull up a tweet that I saw this week that I thought really was great for baseball in general. Like the rule changes we saw over the past year or so, like the pitch clock being included. So essentially here, it's cut down. At least this is from the 4th. So the rule changes have cut down 30 minutes of downtime from the game. So in 2022, the games were on averaging 3 hours and 9 minutes. This year so far, they're at 2 hours and 38 minutes. And then also viewership was up 42% on opening day, which I would guess that has to do with all the games being on during opening day, most likely. So yeah, I'll start with you, Mike. So, what has excited you so far, maybe from a card perspective, maybe from a baseball perspective, so far since the start of the season?
Yeah, from a baseball perspective, it's really exciting. And this was a few days ago, like you mentioned, but that time of game has only crept up by 1 minute. So it's 2:39, still a full 30 minutes faster. And people have talked about how, and the old school fans, which I consider myself one of, have talked about how they're getting less baseball out of it, but it's the same amount of baseball. It's just back to the early 90s speed of play. I saw Tom Tango just did he went back and looked at the Dennis Eckersley, Kirk Gibson, famous at bat in the '88 World Series, and that was compliant with the current pitch clock. So you think that there was a lot of drama in that at bat, but it actually would have fit in with the current pitch clock, which is awesome. I love watching baseball this year, which I hadn't in a handful of years, because it got so slow with all the pitching changes and 3 minutes between pitches. And I'm exaggerating, of course, but it's gotten back to where baseball intended to be. And I think umpires always were supposed to be speeding up the game. They weren't. They didn't feel empowered to, because there has always been a rule of how fast it was going to be. And if you can bring more people in to watch baseball who were kind of fringe fans before or weren't fans at all, then you get more people buying baseball cards, which improves the hobby theoretically. And by the way,
I saw a crazy. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, you're getting a lot more hits. Stolen bases are up by 30+%. The success rate on stolen bases is up to 85%, which is the highest it's ever been. It's early, but it's very promising. More people on base is more exciting for the game.
Right. I agree. And I think I saw another crazy video that came out around opening day. It was like there was an inning during spring training that was quicker than one. It was like one. They compared one pitch of some game a couple of years ago, which I think must have just been like sort of the longest pitch of all time or something like that. But they compared it to an inning, and it went by the same amount of time, which I thought was like a whole half inning compared to one pitch. It was crazy. So Victor, right. Yeah. So Victor, from your perspective, I guess kind of same question. What's excited you so far with the start of the baseball season?
I like I like it overall. I think it's going to be at the end of the season, it should be considered a win, right? I do like the the stolen base factor is going to bring a lot more excitement into the game. I heard this morning on MLB Network, the Cleveland Guardians have attempted 13 steals so far, and they've gotten 11 of those have been actual stolen bases. So they're like 11 for 13, just showing just how aggressive certain teams can be if they have speed on the bases, right? And that's bringing just a big element of excitement, and base hits are now, now you can sneak one in through the hole instead of having this shift, right? I was not a fan of this shift. And seeing what they're doing now, to me, the game needs to be fair on both sides, offensively and defensively. And getting rid of that shift makes it fair to both sides, I believe.
And so I'll kick it to you as well, Dr. Beckett. Have you been enjoying the games more? Have you been watching more games? Like, what's the experience been like for you with the start of the baseball season so far?
Well, I've been watching the statistics. Not the games, but first of all, it's going to make baseball a more athletic game, and it's going to be enjoyable to me. It's bringing back some athleticism. John Keating's favorite player, Herb Washington. You've got there could be pinch runners now. I think mathematically, just 4.5 inches makes a big deal for beating out infield hits. For you get a bunt single, and it's a double for some of these really fast guys. So I think these teams are gonna retool for the new rules, and I think we could see some really spectacular differences that are beyond what they imagine. But my second point is the tweet said it eliminated 30 minutes of downtime, and that's sort of not true the way I call downtime, because there's the same amount of time between innings. That's right. My downtime when I go to the bathroom, whether I'm at home or at the game. The innings, the half innings, are going to go faster. The batter, the pitcher batter interactions are going to be more. You got to be attentive. But when the third out is made, there's still several minutes until, and that's downtime. But that's commercial downtime. But that's when I go to the bathroom, and so that is, and that. They could have done something with that, and heavens no, they're not going to do that. But there's a long time between innings compared to 50 years ago. So that's the downtime, and that's, like I said, I think it'll make staying in your seat when there's when some big stick is up and it's a confrontation and there's men on base. Then you're not going to go to the bathroom, and then there's going to be a mass exodus to the bathroom, at the half inning, because it's going to move along fast enough that you're not going to want to leave in the middle of an inning.
Right, and so I'll ask a follow up here. Do you think that the decrease in game time is going to help maybe some of the bigger names because they're just going to be on the screen more, like? And not necessarily more, but in a quicker amount of time. Like, the time in between a Mike Trout at bat, I don't know. I guess I'm sort of making up numbers here, but if it's, 30 minutes of the time that was kind of taken out of the game, it goes from, maybe Mike Trout has a at bat every 30 minutes to every like 22 minutes. I don't know exactly, like I said, the timing here, but do you think that's going to help superstars or help people be more engaged in the game? Because they're going to be more engaged in what's going on in the field because it's all happening much quicker, I guess is maybe the question here.
Well, the people are leaving in the 7th inning. If it's not a really close game or really important game, people are leaving in the 6th or 7th inning of a night game. And there's other people at home and they're watching replays, or they're put it on double speed, or fast forward through the commercials. So it's perfect for fast forwarding through the commercials because they're going to come at a prescribed time, and you're just going to fast forward. And then you're going to watch, and you're probably going to watch maybe at regular speed the innings or slow it down, because it actually will be drama that's not as protracted. So if like I said, if Mike Trout's up to bat, then you're probably just going to hang in there. You're not going to speed it up. You're going to savor it instead of stepping out and, long times between pitches and throwing over and all that stuff. So generally it's a good idea to speed up the game. And this was a way to do it that the players, which is no small thing, that the Players Association and the owners agreed to, because it didn't affect the revenue. In fact, it could increase the revenue. If I were an advertiser and I've got my commercial in the 8th inning, nobody's watching at the ballpark, or maybe even on TV sometimes, because they've tuned out. Well, now the 8th inning is 2 hours after game time started instead of 3 hours after game time started. And so they got a much better chance of, and for kids can go to the game and maybe see the whole game and still not be late for school in the morning.
Right. I'll kick it over to you, Victor. Do you think the less amount of game time is going to, you think it's going to help? Like, it's kind of a similar question. Do you think it's going to help maybe people be more engaged in the superstars on the field because they're going to see them more in a short amount of time?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's, the game of baseball, we have to think of like where we are at as a society, right? We're attention deficit, right? We're YouTube. We want it quick. We want information quick. We want everything to move quickly, and let's move along. Let's make the point and let's move on. And when you compare it to like the likes of like hockey or even the NBA, where there's a fast pace to the game, and I think that's where really baseball was disconnected to the youth per se. Let's just call it that. Because it was just taking so long, and they really needed to do something to speed it up. And it's just kind of where we're at as a society. We just need to move this thing along. And I think by the end of it, it's going to be Commissioner Rob Manfred's biggest feather in the cap, because he's the one that's been lobbying for this for a very long time.
Yeah, if I can say something,
go ahead,
I have a ton of criticism of Rob Manfred, but he talked this week, Manfred, the commissioner, he talked this week about how concessions aren't down, which I'm not concerned about concessions being down, but he talked about the fact that people are staying at the park longer than they ever have, or than they have in decades anyway. And that's a big win. I also wanted to highlight, Ziggy had a good comment. It's way up there now at 11:47. And this is extremely anecdotal. He wrote, "My 15-year-old son watched a few full games and said it was better. That's a first. My daughter is 13 and has actually been sitting with me watching baseball, which she has never been interested in because it moves so much quicker. And these kids don't have the attention. They're on TikTok. They're 60-second videos. If you have that pitch going every 20 seconds, it's faster. It's more entertaining. People of our age don't have that problem. But if baseball wants to bring in more people, they've got to move it quicker. And last point, I promise. The teams, they started introducing this, I think, in the minor leagues in 2015. The smart teams were adjusting the way they drafted starting in 2015, 2016 to prepare for this change in Major League Baseball and have those fast athletic guys now. And that's an advantage for them.
And I a little bit of a follow-up. Do you think that, like you were saying, the teams sort of switch maybe their draft strategy? Do you think that this means we're going to see more maybe names, like more important names in the league than we have in the past? Like, or do you think it's maybe the opposite, where the team is going to be much better overall from top to bottom, so we're not going to have as many superstars on each team?
That's a really good question. I think a little bit of both. Imagine Ricky Henderson in today's game, where the ball is popped. People are blasting home runs like crazy, more than ever, and speed is important. He was already a top 10 or 20 player of all
Yeah.
time, but he'd be even more important and bigger now. But yeah, I think you'll see guys who are bigger superstars more, and you're not going to get another Shohei anytime soon. But the Trouts, the Mookie Bettses, are going to be more famous, better than ever.
How about a 50-50 guy?
Oh, that would be awesome. The last 70
Ooh.
stolen base guy, I think, was Jacoby Ellsbury, 2009 maybe. And I think we'll see another 70 stolen base guy, but a 50-50 would be amazing.
Ronald Acuna, if
Yeah.
he's completely well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll kick it to Victor, and then I'll kick it to you, Dr. Beckett, as well. So Victor, do you think, like, how do you think we've obviously seen, you know, like the statistics said, the amount of batting averages going up, the amount of stolen bases going up. How do you think this is going to affect the play on the field? Obviously, other than speeding it up, like, do you think that what do you think are the other ways that it's going to affect play on the field?
Oh, wow. I'm concerned with the pitchers. I know there's some pitchers that are struggling really. I think with the pitch clock, are they going to feel rushed to the point where there's going to be more injuries? I don't know. Is there going to be more injuries because we're being a lot more aggressive on the base pads? And so that's kind of an area of concern for me, is just the amount of injuries. I guess time will tell, but we'll see.
And so I'll kick to you, Dr. Beckett. Do you think that the game, you know, the shorter game is going to be better? Like, I guess so far, and maybe this happens where there's like the honeymoon stage of most things. Like, do you think people are really liking it now, and maybe they're going to shift because they want to spend more time at the ballpark, or maybe they enjoy kind of sitting there and not exactly not paying attention to the game, but like sitting there on their phones and maybe having it in the background, and now you're going to have less time of that. So do you think that there's going to be a honeymoon stage that ends, or do you think that overall people are really this is how we're going to enjoy the game, and people are going to enjoy it more in the long term?
I think it's going to be a fundamental change. I mean, now if there's 2 outs and a runner on first base, I got to go to the bathroom. I'm talking too much about going to the bathroom. I got to go to the bathroom, and so I'm just going to go. I think anytime a runner is on base, especially first base, I believe they can, you know, to Mike's point, I think there's players out there. If the league average is 85%, I think there's runners that are so fast and so perceptive about when to run that there's going to be base runners that are going to be close to 100% success rate. At least going first to second, and second to third is considered easier sometimes by some base runners to steal anyway. And so if you're on first and you get to third, then instead of having slugging outfielders, maybe you got speedy outfielders that a single can be a triple. A bunt could be, they can get over. And so sacrifice hits, who needs to do that? Sacrifice flies, you would still do. So the fundamental changes in the strategy of the game are going to keep people in their seats because you're not out of it. You know, you got somebody on first, they could easily get into scoring position if they have a 90+% success rate. And frankly, if the pitcher can't throw over that much and can't hold them close, but some of the pitchers that can't hold them close, you know, by other crafty means, Andy Pettit kind of stuff, they're going to be out of the league. A relief pitcher that can't hold them is going to be out of the league. And so there are going to be unintended consequences, but I think there'll be more scoring, there'll be more hitting, there'll be more stolen bases, and all those are exciting things. And they emphasize the athleticism. There'll be more fielding. There's going to be, I mean, there's still going to be great fielding plays, but maybe more now if the ball is in play and you've got these speedy outfielders. There's going to be more of an emphasis on speed, and that's going to be, and just like the game of basketball, huge emphasis on speed. They don't call traveling, they don't call palming, because they want to encourage the athleticism. and the
Right.
spectacular, the highlights. There's going to be more highlights.
Right. Yeah, so we're coming up here on the top of the hour. Unfortunately, that means we're kind of coming to the end of the show here. I'll do one more round here. Mike, what are your kind of final thoughts on the episode, sports cards in general?
In what do you mean exactly? Sorry.
Sorry. Do you have any final thoughts for the audience? I guess is maybe the better way to word the question.
Yeah, I would stick with hobby boxes, not retail for sure. I see lots, and somebody commented earlier that their Walmart and Targets are never stocked. Mine are here in Maine. Every time I go in, fully stocked. Stick with hobby boxes, even if it is Fanatics and you don't like them.
Always pick the less available product.
Yeah.
And Victor, same question for you. Any final thoughts on the episode today?
No, had a great time. Great topics. I'm more of a singles guy, so that's just my preference. I can get the dollar boxes of the latest product. I can go to the next card show and load up at a fraction of the cost and just pluck what I want and not have all the leftovers.
Not if you're behind me. It's a race to the boxes.
That's right.
Again, kick it to you for one last time, Dr. Beckett. Do you have any final thoughts for today?
Thanks for keeping it moving, Adam. We really got around the horn. It felt like around the horn, the talk show thing. So thanks, and express my thoughts and good interaction, good feedback from the comments in the crowd. So enjoyed it as always.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure to check back to the Hobby Hotline YouTube channel on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern for Hobby Hotline again. And then next Saturday back here on Bench Clear Media. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you in the next one.